Welcome to English Avenue YouTube, the channel to learn English the easy way. Let's start. In a charming and peaceful town, nestled between rolling hills and dense, whispering forests, lived a young woman named Evelyn. From the time she was a child, Evelyn had always been quiet and introspective, finding solace in the pages of the books she read with unwavering passion. She spent countless hours lost in imaginary worlds, where grand adventures unfolded and love stories blossomed. Books were her escape, her comfort, her secret window to a universe far beyond the boundaries of her small town. For as long as she could remember, she had been perfectly content living within the pages of her beloved stories, never feeling the need to seek excitement beyond them. But life, unpredictable as ever, had a way of unraveling the most carefully built illusions. A single moment, a single encounter, would soon shift her world in ways she never could have anticipated. And without realizing it, her own story was about to begin, one that no book could have ever prepared her for. It was a warm and golden afternoon when Evelyn decided to take a leisurely stroll through the park near her home. The sun bathed the landscape in a soft glow, casting playful shadows on the winding pathways as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. As she walked, lost in thought, her gaze drifted toward an open field where a group of young men played soccer, their laughter echoing through the air. Among them, one figure stood out immediately. He moved with effortless energy, his tousled brown hair catching the sunlight, his smile so genuine it seemed to brighten the very air around him. There was something captivating about him, something that made her breath hitch in her throat. His name, she would later learn, was Adrian. Unintentionally, Evelyn found herself frozen in place, mesmerized by the way he carried himself, the easy confidence in his stance, the way his teammates gravitated toward him, as if drawn by an invisible force. And then, as if fate had decided to intervene, his eyes met hers across the distance. It was only for a moment, a fleeting connection, a silent acknowledgement, but in that brief instant, something unfamiliar stirred inside her. A strange warmth spread through her chest, her pulse quickened, and before she could understand why, she averted her gaze, her cheeks burning with an inexplicable shyness. She turned on her heel and hurried home, willing herself to forget the way he had smiled at her, the way her heart had skipped a beat. But no matter how much she tried, the memory of that brief encounter lingered in her mind, replaying over and over, as though it had etched itself into her very soul. The following day, as if fate itself had nudged her forward, Evelyn found herself wandering back to the park. She told herself it was just another ordinary walk, that she wasn't hoping to see him again, but deep down, she knew the truth. Something had drawn her back, an invisible pull she couldn't explain. And there he was. Adrian stood in the same spot as the day before, laughing freely, his voice carrying through the warm afternoon air. He seemed so at ease, so effortlessly alive, surrounded by friends who hung on to his every word. The sight of him, so full of light, made her heart pound in anticipation. She hesitated for a moment, uncertainty creeping into her mind. Would he even notice her? Would he remember their fleeting glance from the day before? Swallowing her nervousness, she gathered her courage and took a slow, hesitant step forward. Then another. Before she could talk herself out of it, she was standing close enough to be heard. "Hi," she whispered, barely trusting her own voice. Adrian turned, and the moment his eyes met hers, he smiled, a warm, easy smile, as if he had been expecting her all along. "Hey there," he greeted, his tone light and welcoming, as if they had known each other forever. That was all it took. A simple exchange of words, a small moment of bravery, and just like that, a bond began to form. What started as an innocent conversation soon unfolded into something deeper. They spoke about everything and nothing, about the simplest joys and the dreams they held close to their hearts. The more they talked, the more Evelyn realized how effortlessly he made her feel seen, understood, like she had always belonged there, right beside him. And so from that day on, their friendship took root, growing stronger with each shared laughter, each stolen glance, each unspoken feeling that neither of them was ready to name just yet. Days turned into weeks, and before they knew it, Evelyn and Adrian had become inseparable. They spent endless hours lost in conversation, their words flowing effortlessly as they uncovered dreams, fears, and childhood memories. They spoke of the future, of places they longed to visit, of books that had shaped them, and of moments in their past that had left marks only they could understand. With each passing day, their connection deepened, weaving an invisible thread between them, one that neither of them dared to acknowledge, but both could feel. For Evelyn, it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had always been reserved, content in her own world, never quite feeling like she fit anywhere. But with Adrian, things were different. He made her feel seen, not just noticed, but truly understood. She marveled at the way he laughed, a sound so contagious it had the power to brighten even the dullest of days. She admired the way he spoke about his passions, with such fire in his eyes that it made the world seem bigger, more exciting. And most of all, she cherished the way he listened, really listened, whenever she spoke, as if every word she said mattered. Yet, as her affection for him grew stronger, so did the fear she had tried so hard to bury. Could someone like him, so charismatic, so full of life, ever see her the same way? She was quiet, introspective, always observing from the background rather than taking center stage. What if she was just another friend to him? What if the way she felt was nothing more than a one-sided dream? These thoughts haunted her, filling her with doubt. She knew what she felt in her heart, but fear kept her from believing it could ever be real. Still, no matter how much she tried to silence her emotions, the truth remained. Adrian had become the most important part of her world, and nothing would ever be the same again. Despite the doubts that lingered in her mind, Evelyn could not ignore the undeniable bond that had formed between them. No matter how much she tried to suppress her feelings, they only grew stronger with each passing day. She knew she couldn't keep them hidden forever. And so one afternoon, as they sat side by side on a bench overlooking the tranquil lake, she gathered every ounce of courage she had. The golden light of the setting sun reflected off the water's surface, casting a warm glow around them. Evelyn could feel her pulse quicken, her hands trembling slightly as she turned to look at Adrian. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "Adrian, there's something I need to tell you." Her voice was soft, but carried the weight of every emotion she had kept buried for so long. "I think I'm in love with you." The moment the words left her lips, time seemed to stand still. The world around them faded into silence, the only sound the distant ripple of water against the shore. Evelyn held her breath, bracing herself for whatever was to come. Would he hesitate? Would he look away, struggling to find the right words to let her down gently? Her heart pounded against her ribs as she prepared for the worst. But instead of rejection, Adrian reached out and gently took her hand in his fingers warm against her skin. His gaze met hers, filled with something deep and unspoken. Then, as a slow smile spread across his face, he murmured, "Evelyn, I've been waiting for you to say that." His voice was tender, laced with sincerity. "I love you too." A wave of relief, joy, and disbelief washed over her all at once. Every fear, every insecurity that had once held her back melted away in that moment. Before she could even process it, Adrian leaned in, closing the space between them. Under the golden hues of the fading sunlight, their lips met in a gentle, heartfelt kiss, one that spoke of every unsaid feeling, every shared moment, and every promise that their love was real. And just like that, with the whisper of the wind around them and the lake shimmering behind them, Evelyn knew this was the beginning of something beautiful, something meant to last. From that day forward, Evelyn and Adrian became inseparable. They wandered through every hidden corner of their town, sharing laughter, whispered secrets, and moments that felt like they belonged to a world only they could see. Together, they built memories that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. Afternoons spent lying under the shade of the tallest oak tree, tracing patterns in the clouds, stolen kisses beneath the flickering glow of streetlights, late-night conversations filled with dreams of what the future could hold. But as in all great love stories, theirs was destined to face an unexpected challenge. As the vibrant hues of summer faded into the crisp golden tones of autumn, a piece of news shattered their perfect world. Adrian's family had decided to move to a distant city. The word struck Evelyn like a sudden gust of icy wind, leaving her breathless. The life she had come to cherish, the love she had found, suddenly felt as though it was slipping through her fingers. She wanted to believe it wasn't real, that there was still time, that something could change. But deep down she knew their days together were now numbered. Seeing the distress in her eyes, Adrian took her hands in his grip firm yet gentle. "Evelyn, listen to me," he said, his voice steady with conviction. What we have, it's not going to change just because of distance. Love isn't about being in the same place. It's about knowing, no matter where we are, that what we share is real." His words were a promise, one that she desperately wanted to believe. And so, rather than drowning in sorrow over the inevitable goodbye, they chose to live in the present. They spent every waking moment together, treating each day as if it were their last. They watched the sun rise and set from their favorite hilltop, danced under the autumn rain without a care in the world, and whispered dreams of someday between the spaces of their intertwined fingers. They knew their time was slipping away, but they refused to let it be filled with regret. Because no matter what the future held, they had now, and they would make every second count. They spent their final days together wrapped in moments they wished could last forever. They watched the sun dip below the horizon from their favorite spot in the park, their fingers intertwined as if holding on to time itself. They danced under the rain, laughing as droplets clung to their skin, pretending for just a little while that the world wasn't about to change. They whispered promises of forever, of love that would defy distance, of a fate that would bring them back to each other no matter how far apart they were. But time, relentless and unforgiving, refused to pause. The day of their goodbye arrived like a storm neither of them could outrun. Evelyn felt as though her chest was caving in, her heart cracking with each passing second. As they stood at the bus station, reality loomed over them like a shadow. She clung to Adrian with everything she had, as if holding on tight enough could keep him there, could keep their love frozen in the moment before everything changed. Tears streamed down her face, unchecked, unrelenting. Her hands trembled against the fabric of his jacket, unwilling to let go. "You can't leave," she whispered, the words barely audible through the lump in her throat. "I don't know how to do this without you." Adrian cupped her face gently, brushing away a stray tear with his thumb. His own voice wavered as he spoke. "Evelyn, I swear to you, I will come back for you. No matter how long it takes, no matter where life takes us, I will find my way back to you. I could never forget you." His words were a vow, but they did little to soothe the ache in her chest. With one last lingering look, one final kiss that tasted of love and heartbreak, Adrian turned and boarded the bus. Evelyn stood motionless on the sidewalk, watching as the vehicle pulled away, taking a piece of her heart with it. As the distance grew, so did the weight of emptiness inside her. And when the bus disappeared from sight, she felt as though her world had shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The days that followed were some of the hardest Evelyn had ever endured. The absence of Adrian was like a hollow space in her chest, a void that no amount of distraction could fill. The town, once so full of life and color, now felt empty without him. She found herself retracing the places they had once walked together. The park bench where they had shared laughter, the cobblestone streets where their conversations had stretched long into the evening, the lake where he had once promised her forever. Everywhere she looked, there was a memory of him, lingering like a ghost of the happiness they had known. At first the pain was unbearable. She barely spoke, her thoughts consumed by the ache of missing him. Nights were the hardest, when silence pressed in around her, and all she had were the echoes of his voice in her mind. She longed for the warmth of his presence, for the comfort of knowing he was just a short walk away. But no matter how much she wished, no matter how many times she whispered his name into the quiet of her room, he was gone. Yet as time passed, the unbearable sorrow slowly softened into something different. The sharp edges of her grief dulled, and in their place, a quiet acceptance began to take root. She learned to find comfort in the memories they had created, the whispered promises, the stolen glances, the way his laughter had once filled the air around her. The letters they exchanged became her lifeline, proof that what they had shared had not simply faded into nothingness. And with each word he wrote, with every reminder of the love that still connected them across the miles, she found strength in knowing that what they had was real. The seasons changed, and life continued its relentless march forward. Years passed, bringing new experiences, new challenges, new faces. But no matter how much time slipped away, Adrian never truly left her heart. He was there in the quiet moments, in the songs that reminded her of him, in the dreams that still carried the sound of his voice. Though they were apart, she knew he would always be a part of her, just as she would always be a part of him. One afternoon, as Evelyn wandered through the familiar aisles of her favorite bookstore, running her fingers absent-mindedly over the spines of countless novels, something caught her eye. A book, sitting quietly on the shelf, bore a name she hadn't seen in years, a name she could never forget. Her heart pounded in her chest. Adrian. For a moment, she could only stare, frozen in place. His name was printed in bold letters across the cover, a name that once felt like home. She reached for the book with trembling hands, her pulse quickening as she traced the title. He had become an author, a writer whose words had touched thousands of lives. With breathless anticipation, she bought the book and hurried home, barely able to contain the rush of emotions swelling inside her. The moment she stepped through her door, she flipped open the first page, her eyes hungrily devouring the words. And then as she read, she felt her world tilt. Between the lines of his story, she saw glimpses of her own. The details, the places, the moments, they were woven into the pages as if frozen in time. The way they met, the laughter they shared, the quiet, stolen glances. The echoes of their love were there, immortalized in ink. Every word carried a memory, every sentence a whisper of what they had been. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned page after page, her heart aching with both joy and sorrow. Though years had passed, though life had pulled them in different directions, their story had not been forgotten. He had written them into eternity, preserving what they once had in a way that could never fade. As she closed the book, pressing it gently against her chest, a soft smile curled on her lips. Their love had never truly disappeared. It lived in those words, in the memories they had shared, in the unspoken connection that time and distance could never erase. She turned to the window, where the sky was painted in shades of gold and crimson, the sun setting like it had on so many of their evenings together. With a quiet exhale, she whispered a promise to the wind, sending it out into the vastness of the world, hoping somehow it would reach him. "I'll never forget you, Adrian. You will always be my first love."